Karen Campbell, and welcome to Charm TV's Game Changers. On today's show, our guests include Ed Berlin, owner of the Ivy Bookshop in Baltimore, and Jill P. Carter, director for the Office of Civil Rights and Wage Enforcement for the City of Baltimore. So stay with us. We will be right back with more Game Changers. And joining me now is Jill P. Carter, Director for the Office of Civil Rights and Wage Enforcement for the City of Baltimore. Jill, thank you so much for joining us here on Game Changers today. Game Changers, you in fact are a game changer with everything you've accomplished so far and things that you are going to accomplish. You've served in the House of Delegates since 2003, and you've recently started a new position as the director. Do you consider yourself a game changer?
So I really haven't thought about that, but let's hope so. Let's hope I'm a game changer, because frankly, the outcomes of a lot of these games need to be changed when it comes to injustice, disparate treatment of people throughout the city and the state.
Mm-hmm. And with your new position, have you, I know it's only been about 6 or 7 months so far.
Since January, yes.
Since January. So I'm sure there's so much work that needs to be done. How do you manage things that need to be done?
Really good staff and participation. So just briefly, the Office of Civil Rights has 4 different agencies combined into one, and each agency has a board or commission. And so the good news is that in addition to the hardworking staff that we have to offer support to investigate a lot of the complaints that we get in each agency, we also have boards and commissions of people that are very committed, that volunteer their time from all, primarily live in Baltimore City, that want to help to elevate these issues. And so we're very fortunate because we're not all by ourselves. In fact, one of our greatest desires is to do more outreach and really utilize our board and commission members as ambassadors for justice throughout the city.
And that's important, getting people in the community involved with helping to better the city of Baltimore. Have you gotten a lot of response, feedback, people, calling, inquiring, hey, how can I help? How can I do my part?
Oh, absolutely. So, we were advertising for board members earlier on, and many people offered that, if I'd like to serve on a board, but even if I can't, I want to offer my assistance and my expertise in certain areas. So I'm very much looking forward to that. Our Community Relations Commission has decided that they are going to break into committees and include community partners in those committees when it comes to housing, education, employment, and a myriad of other issues.
So your office oversees the Civilian Review Board, and that's come up as a hot topic recently because of everything that's been going on. Talk to us a little bit about that and where you see this Civilian Review Board going.
So I suppose I am an eternal optimist, because I believe that we're at the right time in the country, in the city, and because of the consent decree, that we are going to elevate the power and the authority of the Civilian Review Board. It was created in 1999, and my understanding is until a couple of years ago, there was only one employee, one investigator. And so, of course, the work was voluminous, and there was no real commitment to making sure that there was a fair opportunity for people to come to a board outside of the police departments or internal investigations within the departments, to a civilian-led board for review. And so it's been a real tug of war, a real struggle, but we're making a lot of progress. And I think that because of the consent decree, in part, following the DOJ, Department of Justice investigation and report, I think that has, to a large extent, changed the level of cooperation between the law enforcement agencies and the Civilian Review Board, as well as new leadership. Mm-hmm.
And new leadership, of course, is something that's been talked about a lot too, in terms of, when you talk about the police department, the Civilian Review Board, just making sure that the people in charge, of course, get along and that they can do their jobs together without bickering at one another, because we all want to see something positive in the end. And we all want to work together.
Well, we do. I mean, it's critical that we work together because otherwise we're not going to fix a lot of the problems. Only through having a robust civilian review board will we actually be able to deliver the accountability and transparency and trust that people in the community feel has been lacking in terms of not really believing that if they have a complaint against a law enforcement officer, that one, they're going to be made aware of it's going to be adequately investigated. And then if there is an outcome that bodes in favor of the fact that there was misconduct, that there will be any repercussions for the officer on the part of the agency. And so that's why the Civilian Review Board remains a very critical part of instilling trust between law enforcement and community.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a quick break, but we're going to come back and talk more about what the office does and talk a little bit more about a civil rights breakfast that's coming up next month. So stay with us. We will be right back with more Game Changers. And welcome back to Game Changers with my guest, Jill P. Carter, Director for the Office of Civil Rights and Wage Enforcement for the City of Baltimore. So I want to jump right in and talk about the Community Oversight Task Force. Talk to us a little bit about that and where you see that task force going.
The Community Oversight Task Force was created by the consent decree. And so the mayor has appointed 9 people throughout the city of Baltimore, and their number one charge is to review the operations of the Civilian Review Board and look for ways that the board must be improved in order to be effective and in order to realize its full potential and serve the people of Baltimore the way that it should in its full capacity. And so that could be everything from policies, cooperation with law enforcement, to actual proposed changes in legislation, and then the ultimate authority of the board. And I am very much in favor of it. I have a lot of hope because I think that the Civilian Oversight Task Force will just lend weight and give credence to what we already know, which is that we need greater authority, we need greater discretion to be able to determine what types of cases we are able to review, and then we need greater authority for the outcome of the board's decisions to be adhered to by law enforcement.
Okay. And I wanted to change topics a little bit. There is a big event coming up next month.
Yes.
We have the 26th Annual Civil Rights Breakfast. Now, interestingly, your father was fighting for civil rights.
Yes.
So lots of ties here to Baltimore.
Oh yeah, so I'm born and raised in Baltimore, but I was born into the belly of the civil rights struggle. And so my father, Walter P. Carter, led a lot of desegregation efforts. But also, I think what he did is, it's usually not popular at the time that you're doing it. I've experienced that myself, but he worked courageously and relentlessly to eradicate discrimination. And so very interestingly, I view that as the job of the Office of Civil Rights. I think we are here to eradicate individualized as well as systemic discrimination throughout Baltimore City.
Okay, and this breakfast is September 25th.
Yes,
right.
And so we're very excited. So this will be the first breakfast since I'm director, and Mayor Pugh is here, and so it's important to us to make sure that we do a really good job with this breakfast. We're going to have the dynamic Dr. Cassandra K. Wise Whitehead, a professor at Loyola. She's just really distinguished herself in Baltimore as a serious voice for the cause of justice. And then we're going to have one of my favorite poets, Lady Breon. We're also going to do something special, which is we're going to honor the children of the Goon Squad. So if people don't know what the Goon Squad is, Google it, look it up, because it's very important, the Goon Squad members. And then we're also going to for the first time, going to offer civil rights scholarships to middle school and high school students.
Oh, wow. That's very intriguing. Very nice. Very nice. So stay with us. We will be right back with more Game Changers. And welcome back to Game Changers with my guest, Jill P. Carter, Director for the Office of Civil Rights and Wage Enforcement for the City of Baltimore. So with everything that you've been able to accomplish, you have so much more to go. In your journey, what do you see your legacy? How do you want people to remember you?
Well, I'm not sure if I really know all completely yet, but I think one, I want this I want to be a game changer. I want this Office of Civil Rights to really realize its full potential in terms of the way that we are able to serve the people of Baltimore City. And then finally, I believe that I just really want people to know at the end of my life that I really did put others before myself and seek to serve. And I've always said to my friends, like, you know, I don't really know how important it is every single day if I'm really happy as it is that I used my life and my opportunity to make life better for other people.
Wow. Well, thank you so very much, Jill P. Carter. We appreciate you coming on Game Changers today. You've been an inspiration, not just to me, but I'm sure many of our viewers that are out there today. And once again, I just want to let people know the 26th Annual Civil Rights Breakfast is going to be September 25th at the Baltimore Hilton. So if you don't have a ticket, you might want to purchase one earlier rather than later. So stay with us. We will be right back with more Game Changers. And welcome back to Game Changers. Joining me now, Ed Berlin. Thank you so much for joining us today on Game Changers. So I want to start out. Now, you were named one of Baltimore's best. Now, that is a very high honor. When you first found out that you were receiving this honor, what thoughts went through your mind?
I was a little surprised. I mean, there's so many amazing people in this city who contribute so much that it was a little bit of a shock, a little quirky, but it gave some visibility to the literary community in Baltimore, and that's a good thing, and it gave some props to the Ivy Bookshop and our book cafe, Bird in Hand, and so I was delighted.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the Ivy Bookshop. So you co-own the Ivy Bookshop with your wife, Anne.
Yes, and we have a new owner, a new co-owner by the name of Emma Snyder, who was the former director of the Penn Faulkner Foundation in Washington. Emma is a Baltimore girl, great credentials in the literary community. Penn Faulkner is one of the leading literary foundations in the country and has always wanted to be part of a bookstore, and she's just a great addition to what we're doing.
Now, you talk about what you're doing, all three of you together. So you are originally from Baltimore, but you and your wife lived in New York for some time and then moved back to Baltimore. Tell us a little bit about that story, how that happened, how you got introduced to the Ivy Bookshop.
Well, I am from Baltimore. My wife is from Salt Lake, and we lived in Manhattan and then in suburban New York for over 30 years. And we probably could have moved anywhere, but even though Anne is from Salt Lake, I think we both have a great deal of admiration for the city, and we were coming back all the time, and I just think it was a perfect second chapter in our careers. We didn't come back necessarily to own a bookstore, that just sort of happened along the way, but Baltimore was where we wanted to be because of the people, because of the cultural community, and so here we are.
So what would you say was the defining factor to move back here to Baltimore?
Other than the Ravens and the Orioles, and I think Baltimore is a compelling place. It has a lot of challenges, there's no question about it. But Baltimore has great bones. It has a phenomenal history. Some of the most creative people. I think people in Baltimore don't always know that living among them are famous writers and famous painters and famous educators and lawyers and doctors. So, you know, Baltimore is an amazing place, and it attracts, I mean, I'm from Baltimore, but it attracts talent from all over the world. Some to go to school here, and some just because they hear about it. They hear about that it's an affordable, highly dynamic, highly cultural place, and so it wasn't that hard of a sell for my wife, who again is from Salt Lake. It wasn't that hard for her to leave a job. She was a senior manager at one of the country's leading publishing companies, to come to Baltimore and to just feel what it's like to be part of the community.
And like you said, she has a background in publishing, but you have a different background.
I do. I have a kind of a checkered career. I went to school, public school all the way through here in Baltimore, City College, still wearing my ring. UMBC and University of Maryland Law School. Went to Washington to work for the FCC. And then was headhunted to become the technology attorney at Citibank. And that led to a series of jobs, senior level jobs at Citibank, at Deutsche Bank, at Reuters.
Wow. So you have a very, like you said, a very colorful background. But, you know, I want to stop you here because we need to take a break. And once we come back, I want to talk about how the Ivy Bookshop is helping to reach more people in Baltimore, including those artists. And I know you all get into the education realm as well. So we're going to talk about that once we come back. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Game Changers. Joining me now, Ed Berlin. We're going to continue our conversation about the Ivy Bookshop and Baltimore and all things good. So the Ivy Bookshop has a lot of partnerships. You all are in the community working, which says a lot about what you're doing. Well,
Baltimore, success in Baltimore requires collaboration. The most successful anything you want to talk about is a collaborative effort. And we're really proud that even though we're a very small bookshop, we are the bookseller for the Baltimore Book Festival and for the Baltimore Speaker Series. And we are the primary bookseller for the Enoch Pratt Central Library and the Baltimore County Public Library as well. And so we have collaborations with private schools, with public schools. We have just a phenomenal relationship with Johns Hopkins and support their writing seminars in their English department and a lot of other areas within Hopkins. So you have to work as a team. Even bookshops and educational institutions. And so that's a story of how things get done in this city.
And that's important to have these partnerships in a place like Baltimore City, a place that a lot of people want to see grow and to see change. And you are part of, I can call it a movement to help Baltimore become better.
Well, first of all, let me say one of our leading partnerships is with one of Baltimore's celebrity chefs, Spike Giarday from Woodbury Kitchen. Spike and the Ivy opened up something called Bird in Hand, which is a book cafe at 33rd Street, a block away from the Hopkins campus in Charles Village. And it shows a commitment on Spike's part and all of the Woodbury Kitchen people and the Ivy to do more and more in the center of the city. So yes, we are committed, but I don't want to make it sound like we are doing these things on our own. Strong City, Karen Stokes, the Strong City organization, with their literacy programs and their efforts to provide community services across the city. You know, we're very much a part of what Karen is doing, and we try to fit in. Literacy is an important part of the success factors of Baltimore. Getting a book in the hand of every student is not enough. Every child, whether they're a student or whether they're in pre-K or whether they've decided to leave school temporarily, it's not enough to put books in children's hands, in students' hands. We have to give them the excitement. We have to give them the sense that reading is a form of communication, it's a form of travel, that there's another student in another room reading the same book, that many of the great authors of Baltimore, like D. Watkins and Laura Lippman and Rafael Alvarez, are Baltimoreans and were probably born and raised within walking distance of where they're living today. That gives students hope that they can make a career from reading and writing, and so that is part of the success factors of the city. And
I want to read you a quick statistic. This is according to the Baltimore City of Health. Now, they came out, a 2017 study, and said basically about 55% of 3rd and 8th graders in Baltimore cities, they can read at a proficient or advanced level. That's only 55%.
And those are only the students enrolled in school.
Only the students enrolled in school.
There should be students that aren't even in school. That's a horrific statistic, and you know, you have to grab children when they're receptive. And primary and middle schools where kids' minds are growing and opening, There are programs across the city of Baltimore. There's the Charm Journal, which is was initiated by public school teachers, but now is run by middle school students from a number of schools that not only are writing, but they are editing and publishing their own publication. There's room for more and more of those activities. That's what it's going to take to move that number from 55%.
All right. Well, we look forward to more great things from you, Mr. Berland, and the Ivy Bookshop, and all of the great partnerships that you have with folks around Baltimore City. I want to thank you so much for joining us
We're
today
proud to be part of the community.
To enlighten us. Thank you so
Thank
very
you so
much.
much.
All right. All right. Thank you so much. Well, that's all the time we have for Game Changers today. I'm your host, Karen Campbell. Thank you so very much for watching. We'll see you next time. Do you know a game changer in Baltimore? Send us your ideas to charmtv@baltimorecity.gov.